desperate, at the time I was 17, 18, unemployed, and I was desperate to get a break. And I knew that if I did get a try, I would grab the chance.
I think it was always going to be boxing. The minute I stepped into the gym as a 10 or 11 year old, boxing just took hold of my heart straight away. I love everything about the sport of boxing.
Hello, I'm Marie Crowe, and this is We Become Heroes, the RTÉ Sport podcast that explores how elite athletes and sports people reach the top of their game and the lessons that they learned along the way. I'm delighted to say that my guest is Olympic silver medalist Annalise Murphy. Annalise, thank you so much for joining me. First of all, just how are you? How's life? How's things?
Thank you very much for having me on. Life is good. It's hectic. I'm currently in Trinity doing an MBA, which is a bit of a shock to the system. I think I'd maybe started to realise I put so much effort into sailing so that I wouldn't have to go and study. But it's nice to do something that's very different, even though it's quite challenging for me. And trying to figure out life and what I'm going to do with myself.
That must be so hard. Like when you've been doing pretty much the same thing for such a long time, something that consumes probably nearly every thought that you have, to not having to do that anymore.
Yeah, I think when I was sailing and Olympic sailing, I just had this goal. I probably was maybe overly obsessed with it, but I knew that I had a purpose every day. And even when I had unmotivated days, I still knew that I had what I had to do. I was I could always get the training done, because it was just, even, I didn't enjoy it all the time, but it was my job, and I had a routine, and I had this goal of the Olympics, or, smaller goals of, world championships and European championships to look forward to. And also it was something that I wasn't good at it all the time, but in general, I was good at sailing and good at training. And then I've started this master's, and I'm not particularly good at studying. And people are like, oh, you must be very disciplined and have very good time management and really just be able to throw yourself into anything. And in my mind, I was like, yeah, I'm sure I will be able to. And then I'm sitting there and I'm like, I have had 6 weeks to write an essay, and I'm there 2 hours before it's due. What am I even going to write about? So I've discovered that I actually definitely perform better under extreme time pressure when it comes to studying and writing essays. But I think the one thing that I do like about it is that it's given me a really good routine. I started at the start of September, and I was really disappointed after the Olympics. But then I ended up so busy with this, and I had to be in college at 9 o'clock every day. So it just gave me this really good routine. And I probably would have just been a bit sad without it, because I would have just had so much time to think. But it kind of just kicked me out of sort of feeling sorry for myself after the games. And I was just so busy, I didn't really realize. And, kind of everything had happened. And then it was Christmas time. And it was probably only when the Winter Olympics were back on there that I started to seeing athletes that things weren't going right for them, and I sort of started to feel the kind of bad feeling again of oh yeah, I remember that.
It must be though, from a fitness point of view, just be so different to training all the time to not having to train unless you want to.
Yeah, I think I haven't. I don't know if I think sometimes athletes either go one way or the other. They just either keep on training and keep up all their fitness stuff, or they just are I'm never training again. And I've definitely kind of kept up my fitness stuff. I've done loads of cycling. So I knew I wanted to do the cycling national championships back in the end of September. So that kind of, after the Olympics, I kind of kept up my sort of fitness for another, 8 weeks, because I knew I wanted to do well at those, the cycling national championships. I actually had COVID while I was doing them, and I couldn't understand why I felt so bad. I was warming up and I go, my lungs are really burning. I think it must be cold today. And apparently everyone was looking at me geez, she's talking very weird, but didn't really think much of it. But ended up then kind of turns out you shouldn't do like a max effort time trial with COVID. I like took myself out for about 2 weeks after that. But it was still, I've kind of, then I like kind of lost quite a lot of fitness while I was sick. But I was quite good at just like slowly getting a bit of fitness back. And then I decided to enter the Seville Marathon with my brother and my brother-in-law, Niall. And that was kind of then like a new goal to start sort of plugging away for that a bit.
So how do you just decide to enter a marathon? Like, did it just come up in conversation? Had you been doing any bit of running, or was it something maybe that you always wanted to do?
I don't know if I actually ever wanted to do a marathon, because they're really hard. Well, like I actually had no idea how hard or how. I had no idea how it was going to be, and I hadn't done like hardly any running for like the previous 4 years because I'd got a knee injury. But then I also discovered that like cycling takes up a huge amount of time. Like if you want to go for like a good endurance cycle, it's like 4 hours of your day gone. And I was kind of, with like sort of winter creeping up and the days getting darker, I was discovering I wasn't having so much time to do that. So I was like, oh, I'm going to start running a little bit again. And then my brother and my brother-in-law, they were like, oh yeah, we'd love to do, they'd already done a marathon. They were like, we'd love to do another one. And I was like, Seville's, it's really flat. There's a direct Ryanair flight there. Let's do that. So that was kind of how it happened. But I was then the only one of us who kind of trained. I wasn't doing much, but I was like chipping away up to Christmas, and they just did nothing. And then poor Niall actually ended up getting injured when he did train, so he couldn't do the marathon. But then my brother, who's some kind of freak of nature, basically did very little training. As far as I could tell, was just like having a great time out having pints, and he ended up beating me by 12 minutes.
No way.
Absolutely disgusted. I was running with him, and he just kept on getting like a little bit further ahead, and then I could see his head bobbing into the distance. So they're really hard though. I don't know how so many people do them. I was like running along and I was like, this is terrible. Like, I'm not getting a buzz here.
I did one in 2008 in Dublin, and a bit like you, it was just so hard. Like, if I hadn't people to meet along the way, like as in I knew that my friends were going to be at different points, I don't think I would have actually finished it. It was just like, okay, get to this one, get to the next one, have a few jellies, just trying to distract myself. But it's just so long, and I wasn't fit enough, and I barely finished. But no desire to ever do one again. Like, it's a major box ticked, and that's about it.
I feel exactly the same. I'm like, I also am like really hoping that all my toenails don't fall off, because they feel very funny. I'm just like, they'll be fine. I'm just not going to look at them.
Oh God, geez, I always admire the people though that are doing them all the time, like all year round. It's amazing. Okay, let's get into our set questions, Annalise. Yeah. And I'm going to take you down memory lane for a little bit, and I'm going to start with your earliest memory of sport.
So my mum went to the 1988 Olympics in Seoul. So from a very young age, I remember just we knew what the Olympics were. Like, I'd say how my mum went to the Olympics, and we'd always be, mum and dad, they'd always be packing their boat up and things like that. So they're kind of my memories of like sailing from a very young age. But then my first memory of the Olympics were the Atlanta Olympics, and my mum was very excited, making us get up in the middle of the night to watch Michelle Smith swim. And it was like, that's my first memory of the Olympics as like a 6-year-old, was that mum was waking me up in the middle of the night to be like, we have to watch the TV now. I was like, okay, didn't really know what was going on. Yeah.
I actually do that with my kids now. If there's something major on, like if Katie Taylor is fighting, I'm like, I don't care if you're tired, you're sitting down there on the couch now and you're watching this fight, because this is amazing, and these are going to be things people are going to be talking about in 20 and 30 years, and you can say that you watch them, and it's really important that you do this, and they have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about and will never remember. But I'm a bit like that. I always feel that let's include them, bring them in. So what about heroes then? Like, it was amazing, first of all, that you had your mom. Like, geez, like what an experience, and what an honor to have your mom there to just look to and see her as a role model. Because as you know, when we were younger, Olympics aside, like there was very, very, very few women on television doing any kind of sport.
Yeah, sure. Like that's my mum was just, she's one of these people as well who just, you know, if anyone says she can't do something, she's like, why can't I do it? And just goes and does it anyway. So, and she'd always have been, whatever, like, I'm the middle child, but like whenever my sister or brother would say, or myself would say we wanted to do anything, she was always the one that was like, yeah, go for it. Even if it was like, you know, crazy ideas and we were never going to succeed at it. She never would say something was a bad idea. She'd always kind of let us give it a shot. So having her kind of growing up it was a big influence. And she gave up so much of her time, like driving us all over the place to like, I tried every sport. I honestly, I thought I was going to be like, I don't know, you know, I wanted to be like an amazing hockey player and tennis player and runner. And like, I was very average to like bottom of the pack, but I like probably got like 100% for effort and all of that.
Like, let's look at that for a sec. So like, clearly you can compete at the top level in one sport, and a lot of the attributes that athletes have, I'm sure, are transferable to the different sports. So what was it like? How come that you were so good at sailing, but then average at other things? I find it fascinating.
I don't even know if I was that good at sailing, actually. I did quite a bit of horse riding when I was younger as well. So I loved that. And I did loads of different sports, but I don't think I really took anything hugely seriously until I actually got very serious about sailing when I was probably 15 or 16. But up until that point, I was just like kind of doing everything. But yeah, I obviously should have realized this sooner that I'm like just naturally an endurance athlete. Like I'd try and sprint and I have no explosive power. But like when you're a kid, you don't realize this. You're just like, why is everyone so much faster than me? I just don't understand it. But then like I'd also wouldn't get tired at all. You know, I could like keep on going all day long. But if there was like any kind of like sort of sprint running, I'd just be like a snail, just basically like crawling along. And yeah, I think I guess in a way, like my parents, they never pushed us at all to do sport. It was just if we wanted to do it, great. And like they were still sailing all the time as well. So like a lot of the time they just be like, come on, we're going off to the national championships. You guys can go and entertain yourself like in the field while we go off sailing or whatever. So it was I didn't grow up thinking I was going to be an athlete or an Olympian, or I just was purely doing sport because I liked being outside. I liked meeting people, loved having the chats, like loved making friends. That was kind of I think sort of my childhood. It wasn't like, oh yes, she's definitely going to be good at sport. It was probably like, she's not very good at anything.
That's amazing. It really is. So what did you try? Like, what were you playing? What were the ones that you were interested in?
So I played loads of basketball when I was younger, which you'd think I'd be good at because I'm so tall, but I don't think I was particularly good at basketball. Like I think I was just, again, average. Like all my friends who were smaller than me were definitely better than I was. And then I played loads of hockey when I was in secondary school. Again, absolutely loved it. And I tried so hard, but like I was the captain of the minor C team. We did win the Leinster League of the minor Cs. But like, so I like try so hard and loved like organizing the whole team and like got everyone like t-shirts with their names on it first. But like we were in the C League. Like there was, the school I was in was really good at hockey. Like there was the A's and the B's ahead of us. I played a lot of tennis as well. Again, I've actually taken it up again now that I'm that I'm in Trinity. I go and play a bit of tennis. But again, I was like, grand at it, but like in no way going to ever be any good at it. I did quite a lot of cross country running. Again, just like middle of the pack. And yeah, I'd sailed a lot with my parents when I was younger, but I didn't do my first sort of like a sailing course where you get taught how to sail until I was 11, which is actually quite old for sailing. Most of the times kids they'll do their first summer sailing course when they're like 6 or 7. And so I was actually quite a bit behind, but like straight away I was, my mum and dad, they bought me an Optimist, which is it's like a small, really small little boat it's for under 15-year-olds. And I loved the boat. Like I literally be there like with fairy liquid and a sponge, like washing it after every sail.
Like it was a pet.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I'd put all the covers on it every day. Like I like it was like my baby. And I did my first sailing course and like absolutely loved it. Just loved, I think, just being out on the water. Like, you know, when you're given your own boat and you're just able to steer around and do whatever you want. Like it's a whole different sort of sense of freedom when you're a kid to actually be able to be like, I could just go off wherever I want now. Like,
Go to America.
And the brilliant thing about actually learning to sail in Dublin is like Dún Laoghaire Harbour is this like perfect place for kids to learn to sail, because you just like, it's big enough that you can like, you know, learn how to sail properly, but it's also so safe. Like you're, you know, surrounded by walls. You're never going to end up drifting off out to sea somewhere. So yeah, I loved, like when I first started to learn to sail myself, absolutely loved it. And I kind of then just started thinking that I was like, oh, I really want to go to the World Championships and all this kind of stuff. But didn't realize that there was like so many other kids that were way better than me and had also been sailing their optimists for like, since they were like 6 or 7. So like a 5-year head start on me as well. And also optimists, they're designed for small children. And I pretty much, by the time I was like 13, I wasn't far off the same height I am now. So I outgrew the boat in about 2 years' time.
So when you did do the sailing course and you got your little boat, were you good at it straight away? Like you had been out with your parents a bit and were probably really comfortable and familiar with everything that you needed to do. But did you have talent for sailing? Like, can you see that? Can I say that?
I don't know if, like, I probably I picked it up very quickly. I learned things quite quickly, but when I'd go to compete, I was quite far behind the other kids that were my age because they'd been doing like specifically sailing the boat for so much longer than I had. You know, I'd go there thinking I'd be like, oh, I loved it. I think that was probably the thing. Like I loved going sailing, which makes a huge difference. Like I wanted to go out. I wanted to go out in the water. And then I had like a couple of great like sailing instructors that, you know, really helped me out when I was younger. They maybe saw something in me, you know, like they kind of pushed me to try and get better and learn how to, you know, sort of like there's all the different points of sailing. Like it's quite complicated and you just need to kind of figure it out when you're younger, you know, how the wind works. So it wasn't really, I think I got into a laser 4.7, which is the same boat I sailed at the Olympics, but just with a much smaller sail when I was 13. And that was like, I suddenly just started making huge improvements. Like from then on, like once I got into the laser, I just was like, found the boat that it was like, it was better sized for me. Like, and I just loved it. And then actually my group of friends that have been very good in sort of optimist sailing and the junior sailing stuff, I caught up with them really quickly then when they all started moving to the laser. And then from there, I just loved it. And mum would drive all three of us, mum and dad would drive all three of us all around to all the events all around Ireland. There's like Leinsters, Munsters, Connachts and Ulsters and the national championships every year. So they'd have the boats on the trailer and they'd drive us around. They actually ended up getting a camper van in 2005. And then they'd be able to tow the boats and then we'd all go to all the events all over Ireland. And then even at that stage, my sister and myself started competing at sort of European championships and events around Europe. So we'd drive to Europe in the camper van and, you know, my sister would be sailing and my mum, my brother and my dad would be off like, I don't know, on holidays, watching on the beach while we were sailing.
Oh, it sounds pretty amazing. So like when you were starting to compete, like what's the training like? How many hours did you have to do? What kind of training did you do?
Yeah. Like when I was younger, it was just like sailing on the weekends and sailing during the winter. That's something that takes a bit of time to get used to. Just gets a bit cold during the winter. Yeah. But again, I guess my mum and dad, they really helped. They did a lot of sort of help with organising the sort of junior racing series in Dublin Bay during the winter time. So there'd be one kind of from September to Christmas, and then another one after Christmas as well. And that would be every Saturday you'd go out and you'd race either inside the harbour or maybe just outside the harbour. And then when I was 15, I got onto the like Irish Sailing Youth Academy. And then I started getting much more sort of structured training. Like we'd have coaches, and they actually hired Rory Fitzpatrick as the youth coach to the end of 2005. And I just started transition year in school. So I then would go sailing every Wednesday afternoon after school, and I'd go sailing on the weekends. And then like all of the like midterms and Christmas, I'd be training. And yeah, having I think Irish Sailing hiring a full-time coach for the sort of youth squad, that's probably what changed my sailing career. Is Rory, he lives in Dunleary, and he was the one who wanted to make sure that we were getting out training all the time. And sure, and I was like, I love getting out in the water, so I just wanted to go sailing as much as possible. And that was like, the transition year was a big year for me because I was able to do a lot more sailing than I normally would have, and I made like big improvements that year. And that was when I kind of started being like, I want to go to the Youth World Championships, and I want to try and do this and that. So it was from that kind of point, like you like look at things that probably are the reason why you ended up doing what you do. And Rory being hired as the youth coach and I think I was also just in the right place at the right time. That's so much of it can come down to luck. Like my sister, who was a few years older, didn't have that opportunity that I had. And then Rory ended up agreeing he came on and started coaching me full time as a personal coach in 2010, and ended up coaching me up until the Olympics there in Tokyo. So it's sometimes I think you just kind of land on your feet with things. So I definitely had like a bit of luck with those kind of things.
Yeah. You have to think that sometimes things are just meant to be, though, as well, that you were meant to cross paths and go on the journey that you did. So what were you working on? So when you were a young athlete, like what kind of things did you have to do? What was the training that you needed to improve on, or the area of your game, as we call it, that you had to work on to get better at most?
Yeah. So in sailing, it's such an experienced sport that you just need to do as much time on the water as possible, because the only way you learn is by sort of being in a situation, and then you learn, okay, that's, what to do or what not to do. So loads of time on the water. And in sailing, sort of boat handling is a big part of it. So being able to do really good maneuvers, tacks and jibes, changing direction. And these are just like drills that you can do over and over again. You don't need that many other people. Or starting practice is another really important one. Being able to have your boat sitting still, like not moving, and then accelerating really quickly off the start line with like a countdown watch. And there's like all of that kind of side of things. And then I guess like while I was in school, because I was also playing hockey and tennis and trying to do cross-country running and stuff, I was actually quite fit anyway. Yeah. So I wasn't doing too much, but I started doing a strength and conditioning program twice a week when I was about 15 or 16, just like, which I didn't realize at the time, I didn't really think anything of it. I'd go in and I'd do a session with, there'd be probably, 3 or 4 other sailors, and we'd go and we'd do our little weight session and go on, go off. It would either, I'd do I think one at 7 a.m. before school on a Wednesday, and then Monday evenings I do one after school. So it was I think that's probably made a huge difference to not getting too many injuries when I got older, was just having a really good base from when I was younger. And then just kind of general just fitness and stuff, I started taking it more seriously as sort of 16, 17, 18, started trying to do sort of fitness training on top of my sailing training, because up until then I was just, sailing was kind of the thing, I sailed and then I did all my other hobbies and sports. But actually specific fitness training, I started kind of coming into it. And also actually Kate Kirby, who's my sports psychologist, she was doing her master's in sports psychology at the time. She actually sailed when she was younger. And so she came away to a few events with us. And from when I was 16, I still have like my notebooks, and I have notes of all the stuff that Kate was like getting me to do. Like, I was absolutely terrible. Like, we went off to Germany, and like, you know, I don't know, I had so much cash that was meant to last me for, you know, my food and my drinks and stuff like that. And I got my entry fee for the event. And I saw this pair of jeans, and I was like, I really want this pair of jeans. So I bought the pair of jeans, and then I had no money to have any food for the rest of the week. So I was like, literally had enough money to buy like one loaf of bread and some ham and cheese. Like, I was just having like ham and cheese sandwiches every day for about a week. But then in my notes I have like from Kate, it's like, know how to manage, you know, you manage your money, and that you don't end up that you have to have ham and cheese sandwiches every day for a week. But like, she, even like from then, like, I have all the like, you know, importance of like having goals, and even simple things like events, like on the morning of your event, that you're like really organized with, you know, your equipment and your food for the day and your drinks, and your sort of list of times, like knowing, you know, I need to be out of bed at this time, and I need to be at the sailing club at this time, and I need to sign out, and I need to do this and that. And they were like skills that, like, you know, at the time you don't even realize that you're learning them, but then it was actually something that I was always used for. You know, I was very good at, even, I don't think I really came across as that organized, but I had everything organized in my head. I knew, you know, I'd have a list of everything I knew I had to do. And that was probably from just like when I was a 16-year-old, just Kate being like, Annalise, you can't spend all your money on a pair of jeans and then not have any food for the rest of the week.
It's so funny, Annalise, because the personality that you put out, it just doesn't really fit with what you actually are behind the scenes, because you're so relaxed and so you're kind of so bubbly, and you know, it seems like nothing really phases you or bothers you, and you know, you could deal with any situation, but behind it all you have everything lined up in a row, you know exactly what you're doing at all times. So it's just really interesting being in your company, and then hearing actually everything that you do, because like from chatting to you, you're so nonchalant about everything that I wouldn't even think that you would be so organized and so dedicated.
Yeah, it's I think I always come across as I'm just like, sure, that'll be grand.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'd also never really like have complained about how much training I do. Like, there's a lot of athletes who are like, oh, I'm doing so much training. And I never really talked about, like, you know, I trained more than like anyone else in the squad. Like, I always did. I felt like I did more than everything, but I never really like complained about it or went on about it. So then I think people just thought that I didn't train, and then they'd like, I don't know, we'd do like fitness testing, and like I'd get like power numbers that would be like, I'd be able to be like an elite cyclist, and people would be like, I didn't know that you did this much training, Annalise. I'd be like, I just don't talk about it all the time. I think I'm quite like mathematical about things as well, and I have like I have a terrible memory for some things, but like a really good memory for other things. So I'll always be doing stuff without really even thinking about it. And then I have everything organized, and then someone will be like, oh, what are we doing this? I'm like, oh, don't worry, I've got that all done. They're like, when did you do this? I was like, well, no, just kind of, but I don't really get stressed. Like,
yeah,
I occasionally get like a little bit stressed, but in general, I'm just kind of cruising along. And
that's it. Like, even listening to you talking there about the people that you had around you, like having a sports psychologist that's so young, like doing S&C before school when you were in transition, you're so casual about everything, but like they're all really big things that a lot of other people would see as being a big deal and make a big deal about it, but you're just like, yeah, that's the way it was and that's what I did. But they were obviously really important and building blocks then for what you're able to achieve in the future.
Yeah, I think it was just, I think I did everything, but I never got too overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
And I think because I enjoyed it mostly as well. Like, you know, that made it like, it makes it much easier. Like I love training. Like I like training more than I like competing. And that would nearly be a problem for me. That's like, you know, I'd always like show up for training and I'd want to do extra, and then like it would actually come to events, and that would be the only time where I'd be a bit like, oh, Like, can we not just go and do another training camp?
Oh, brilliant. So Annalise, was there like a moment where you thought, okay, like I can make it to the top here, that, you know, I can be elite, that I belong at this level?
I think I was very good at like knowing what was going on, and like I knew like where all the events were, like how to qualify for the Olympics. So I knew in 2007, I was only 17, but I knew that the first sort of qualifiers for the Beijing Olympics were the World Championships in Cascais in Portugal. And like, I didn't deserve to be going at all. Like, I didn't have any like senior world ranking or anything, but I just like, I knew all the websites, and like, I'd always be, you know, just kind of like in the background finding stuff out. And I just went online and I applied for a place for my sister and myself to go to it, even though like we didn't have the world ranking to go to be allowed to go, but there's a certain amount of spots, and then they kind of like give like certain wild card spots. Mm. And they ended up giving my sister and myself a wild card spot. And like then James O'Callaghan, our like performance director, I think he got called me up, or maybe my mum up, and he was like, how come the girls are entered into the worlds? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then he was like, they're entered. And I was like, oh yeah, I found a loophole and I entered us. So then there's this like paddock. It's like, okay, we're going to get to go to the Senior World Championships, and you know, who are we going to stay with? And like, you know, we're trying to do everything on this like extreme budget. So then actually one of the members in our yacht club in Dunleary, his daughter lived out in Cascais, Geraldine, and she ended up putting up with my sister and myself while we were out there. She's like, you still like, you know, you kind of have these memories, and like people, that's one of like my big memories, is how sound people have been to me over my entire career. Like, you know, putting me up, looking after me, like all over the world. And Irish people are amazing at, even if it's like, even if you don't know them at all, or it's a really loose connection, people are just so great at just like looking after you. And like, I basically feel like I have all these extra like family members all over the world now, from like all the people I've stayed with over the years. But and we went to these World Championships, and my sister had actually broken her ribs just beforehand she'd stood up on a chair to see what the wind looked like over the harbour wall. But the chair, one of the legs had broken off it, and someone had just stuck the leg back in underneath. So basically the chair just fell and she landed and like broke her ribs. So she was in so much pain, but I was just like, you're going to be grand, Claude, don't worry about it. And we ended up we both did really well. My sister actually made the gold fleet, and then I finished, I was like 7th in the silver fleet, I think. So it was like, that was pretty cool. Just like, that was my first experience. So I was like, people are qualifying for the Olympics, and it suddenly became like real, even though I'd had a couple of really good races. I'd had a couple of races sort of in the like high teens as well. So when you're racing outside, no, it's 100 and there was 130 people entered or something, like, you know, an 18th or a 19th is a really big deal. You're like, oh my God, I'm in like the very top of the fields. And then that summer I did quite well. I finished 10th at the Youth World Championships. I was actually 5th going into the last day, and I'd never been doing that well at an event, and I was so nervous that I went out to the last day, and I had a terrible last day and dropped down to 10th. But it was still like, that was still a huge result for me to like actually be, you know, at the top of and sailing. It's like, it's a sport where there's a huge range of competitors. It's particularly in the laser class, there's 250,000 lasers in the world. So there's a lot of people sail lasers. And like a 10th at a Youth Worlds was a big deal for me. I was pretty kind of excited about it and very motivated. And I was then going into 6th year, and it was like trying to take things a bit more serious study, but I really wasn't. I was just like, all I wanted to do was go sailing all the time. Like any opportunity that I have, I'd be like, oh yeah, I have to go training. And then the World Championships and sort of the last qualifier for the Beijing Olympics were on in New Zealand in April 2008. And that was like, 2 months before my leaving cert. And I don't know how, like, I think I'm like, it's really good having an older sister that's like very good at like persuading and manipulating your parents, because I wasn't that good at like kind of, you know, if they'd say no, I'd be like, yeah, okay, well, she just wouldn't really take no for an answer. And the two of us went off to New Zealand and did the World Championships. And that was like that was sort of then and there, I was like, yeah, I want to go to the Olympics. Like, I knew I wasn't going to be going to the Beijing Olympics. Like, I knew like I was nowhere near good enough. But I was able to do the Senior World Championships and kind of see like all the emotions of people that were getting selected. And then I did the Youth World Championships the week after, and I finished 5th at them. So it kind of made me realize, I was like, yeah, I'm up there. You know, I'm not that bad. And then I came home and sure, like, I think all my teachers were just like, what is this girl at? Like, I was like, don't worry, I'm going to be grand in the Leaving Cert. I know loads. I'd be very good. Like, I'd be really good at paying attention in class, but not so good at the extra study on top of that. So I kind of just had like a basic knowledge, but not actually the real knowledge you need to do really well.
I know what you mean. So what about setbacks then, Annalise? Because everybody has setbacks. There's maybe 1 or 2 people said they didn't have setbacks, but the majority of the people who've appeared on this podcast have had setbacks. What for you was the biggest setback that you had to overcome?
Yeah, I feel like I've had way more setbacks than like good stuff. I think like when I was sort of 19, 20, 21, I found that I was actually like improving all the time, but then my confidence could so easily be knocked and I just get so upset. Like, I think I wanted to do well so badly, and maybe it actually came quite easily for me to do well when I was that age. And then when it wouldn't go well, I'd just be like, it's all over. This is terrible. Why am I doing this? And that was like working with Kate during that period helped me a lot. Just kind of try and control my emotions and be able to understand the difference between sort of rational fears and complete irrational fears. And but like they're all kind of, I think they're all still learning things. And like the London Olympics was obviously a setback because I still have nightmares about, there's sort of 2 races. Like not so much the last race because I was so nervous, but there was 2 races during the series that I could have done much better in, and I kind of still look back to them and I don't know, I was just, you know, young and nervous and but then I don't know, I might still do the same mistakes now. But probably like my like biggest sort of setback was in 2015. I went to the Olympic test event and I don't know, I was completely like burnt out. I put so much pressure on that the only way my life was going to be good was if I won an Olympic medal. And it seemed so far away. I just felt like I didn't even feel like in training I'd do really well. And then we'd just go to race and I'd do badly. And I couldn't understand it. And in my mind, I was like, it's not that I've got worse. I was like, just everyone else has got better. The level has moved on. And I went to the Olympic test event and I finished last in it, like last. And the harder I tried, the worse I'd do in races. I couldn't even understand it. I was like, how am I just, I like I was like the first sort of few days I was upset. And then like, I just kind of like came to accept that I was going to come last in every race. And it was really like, it was horrible. It was definitely the like most miserable week of my life. But then I also got to the end of the week and I realized, you know, I'm still the same person. I still, you know, my family still love me. I still have great friends. Like Rory, my coach, he still wants to coach me. Like it's not, you know, it isn't actually, it wasn't fun, but I think it was a big lesson in the Olympics. They're not going to decide who you are as a person. And it kind of made me be able to sort of just take the pressure off myself a bit. And then I spent the next year really trying to work on what I knew would help me in the Rio Olympics. And then, but I also took that pressure off where I was like, it doesn't matter if I win a medal. If I win a medal, great, but I'm probably not going to win one because I've just come last. So like, if I can come second last at the Olympics, it's great. And I think that was, it was like a huge setback, but then it helped me kind of put everything into perspective as well.
So a good life lesson along the way too. Yeah. So when you think of all the people that you've encountered along the way in your career, coaches, your parents, friends, who had the biggest impact on your career?
Probably, well, definitely my parents, because they've always just supported me, and they've been able to give me such good advice, like even advice about the Olympics. My dad ended up actually coaching my mum at the Olympics, not because like they didn't like meet. He wasn't her coach and they met at the Olympics, just like they had no money and they were like, he was like, I'll go and coach. But they had that experience of, being able to tell you, like, at the Olympics, it's not going to be perfect, but things are going to go wrong. And it's how you deal with those things that go wrong that, decides if you're going to actually have a good Olympics or a bad Olympics. Like, I nearly destroyed my boat the first day I got it at the London Olympics, sort of like a week before racing was going to start. And I was like about to start freaking out. And then I was like, no, they've prepared me for this. They said things are going to go wrong and you just have to accept them. And I was like, it's just a bit scratched. It'll be fine. Like, I don't know. I think it was fine. Like, I won the first 4 races, so it obviously wasn't that so low with all the extra scratches. But them, and then, yeah, I guess Rory, like, I have like, I don't know if I'm like Rory, Kate, and Mark McCabe, my physio, sort of, and strength and conditioning coach. Like, I basically had these 3 people that have been with me from when I was sort of 16 to now. And they've all kind of shaped me as an athlete and a person. And I think I probably also, had a big influence on their life because I've spent so much time with them. But I guess Rory, like, he put in just as much effort into trying to help me do well as I did. He gave up, he was abroad all the time, not at home, like traveling around the world, dealing with me being emotional about doing badly and, kind of the like big sort of emotional highs and lows of competing. And yeah, and then, we definitely we also had like a lot of arguments over the years as well, but you come like the whole way around to now where we're just like great friends and like went on this massive sort of journey for, 15 years. To try and do well at Olympic sailing, and it's just, I think it's the people that you end up just they want you to succeed and you just get on with them. So it's they're the ones that end up having the biggest influence on you.
Yeah, well, you've had great people around you anyway. That's one thing that's really coming through in this interview, the support systems that you had in the environment, which is pretty amazing. So when you think about performances, and even like when you look back to when you were a kid growing up and dreaming of one day going to an Olympics or World Championships, is there one performance that you think, right, well, that's the type of sailor that I wanted to be, that's the type of race that I wanted to be in?
Yeah, I think I always daydream about how I want to perform. Like, I dream about how I want to win races, and I think I also probably I think about things that like should be like impossible. There's no way that I could ever do that. But I just I don't know, fantasized about them that I was going to do it, and then sometimes it did happen. I guess the kind of big sort of career changing year for me was in 2009, my sort of first year as a senior. And I've been doing pretty well. I'd been kind of, having some good events and looking I might be, able to, I don't know, maybe, qualify for the London Olympics, or if not, maybe the Rio Olympics. And then I went to the World Championships and I finished 8th at them, which was way better than my standard at the time. Like I wasn't an 8th in the world standard, but I just had 6 days where, I was just in great form, really enjoying my sailing, and everything was kind of going my way, like, which in sailing does have to happen as well. You can have weeks where things just kind of go your way. Everything just kind of works out and it actually seems quite easy. And then you can have weeks where everything's just not easy and things just don't go your way. But yeah, that was a week where kind of just everything went my way, and it was pretty much that changed my sort of my career, because I qualified for carding money at those World Championships. And that went from that, it's basically could only do events that I could either drive to myself or, somehow sort of scrape together enough money to do them I was actually going to be given a grant to go and compete. And it sort of also meant I was able to defer my degree in college and try and go full-time, because I was like, everyone in the top 50 in the world is full-time. Mm-hmm. And I was like, if I want to have any chance to try and qualify for the London Olympics, I need to go full-time. So I was like, I'll go full-time for a year. If it's not working out and I'm actually terrible, I'll go back to college and forget about it. But I had a really good year, my first year sort of full-time. And then the 2011, I had probably like my best sort of season of my career. I was sort of in the top 5 or the top 10 in every single event I did. And I really just thought, I was like, all happened so quickly. It went from, I don't even know if I'm going to ever be good enough to go to an Olympics to, 2 years later, I was like, I'm actually potentially a medal favourite going into the London Olympics. Like it happened really quickly for me. And maybe like too easily nearly. Like it definitely wasn't so easy after that. But those first like sort of 3 years of full-time sailing, I was just like, this is great. I'm doing great. I'm like, every event was like a bonus. And that was, when I was like, it was suddenly like, and I think realizing probably in 2011, I started to realize, I was like, I could be good enough to actually be in a chance for a medal in the 2012 Olympics. Not like before, I'd always thought, I was like, if I get to an Olympics, like London would be to get the experience, and then Rio would be where I could maybe win a medal. Well, it was suddenly, I was like, I actually think this could be the Olympics that really suits me, where I could actually get a medal. So it's those were kind of, I don't know, I kind of just rambled there. But
oh, good. How does it sit with you? Like how did it sit with you when you were a medal favourite going into games? Like how did that pressure sit on your shoulders?
I was actually completely fine with it, and I was kind of under the radar. Like I don't think like that many people really knew about me, because like I was 22 and sure no one really knows about sailing anyway. Sure, it's a stupid sport. And when I'd get asked, like I was doing quite a few interviews and stuff before the Olympics, and when anyone would ask, like my general answer would be, I'd be like, oh, well, I'm just going here to get the Olympic experience, and hopefully in 4 years' time I'll be in like flying form for 2016. And that was just kind of my answer, and it just, I don't know, I just like, I was pretty happy just to dull down expectations. I kind of had my own expectations of myself, but I was like, there's no need to like, let anyone else know about them. And going into London, I was just, I'd actually rented a house in Weymouth for the 6 months before the Olympics. And so it was nearly like a home from home. I was just training there the entire time. Like my neighbors were like, couldn't wait to cheer me on. Like, these sort of English neighbors that I had. And then for the actual Olympics, I just stayed in the house that I was renting, because it was a kilometre from the Olympic Sailing Centre. So it just, made sense I was like, it was very normal. It was nearly like doing a little competition in my back garden. And I kind of, you have like, I was talking about these like dream scenarios where I was like, I'm going to win every race at the London Olympics. But like in sailing, that's like a golfer being like, I'm going to get a hole in one through all 18 holes. It's like, it's just not, it doesn't happen. It's like, it's a sport where consistency pays off, and not taking big risks risks. So if you're winning races, it might be because you're taking big risks. It's actually the person who's, come in third and fourth and fifth in all the races. They're the one that actually normally sort of end up winning the event. And I went out on the first day and I won both races. And I was like, I'd been kind of known for like winning races. I had like really good boat speed, and I'd won a couple of races on the day during the World Championships the year before. So like, it wasn't really, I was like, that's grand, sure. And it was on a race course that I really liked. And I knew the second day was going to be on two different race courses, one kind of where like under a big hill, and the other one was going to be inside Portland Harbour. So I was like, it's going to be a really difficult day, and I'm just going to go and try and have a decent day. And sure, I went out on the second day and I won both races on the second day. And then like, instead of like, I should have been like, geez, I am class. Like, this is great. I am just way better than everyone else. Instead, I was like, I basically couldn't sleep the rest night, that next night, because I was just freaking out so much.
Is there anything you can do for that? Like, is there anything that you can do mentally to not let that happen? Now, with the benefit of hindsight.
I guess like none of us were really prepared. Like Rory and Kate also weren't prepared for how well it was going to go. Like, I think all three of us knew that I had like the potential to have a good Olympics, and maybe if everything went well, I could maybe be in the hunt for the medals. But none of us really expected that I'd just be, and I don't know if I was sailing exceptionally well or if everyone else was kind of had a bit of like Olympics fever and were sailing badly. I was just being normal, and that was why I was winning all the races. But we learned loads of lessons from London. Was like, but it was we just, I guess you don't take into account what's going to happen. Like, we did a load of what ifs. What happens if this? What will you do? Who will you tell? But like, we didn't have a what happens if you win all the races. We actually did do that after that. What happens if you win all the races? What are you going to do? How are you not going to freak out?
So what's your greatest success then, do you think, Annalise?
There's like, I don't know, like, I feel like I've been really lucky. Like, I've had loads of successes in my career, but then when I look at them, I like see all the failures as well. I felt like for the Tokyo Olympics, I felt I prepared better for them than any other Olympics, but I don't know if I just didn't have the self-belief, or I had such high expectations of what I wanted to achieve. And then when a few little things started going wrong, I couldn't really deal with the fact that, that what I wanted wasn't going to happen. Mm-hmm. But I think like the silver medal in Rio was, I'm going to be so proud of it, because it was always like if you go on like places that suit my sailing style, London, the Weymouth venue really suited my sailing style. It was very similar to going sailing in Dunleary, a similar kind of bay, the similar sort of southwest prevailing wind. The wind, even though it's coming from like a direction, it actually like changes around, like it moves a bit, it oscillates. So, and kind of my sort of mathematical brain really likes sort of problem solving, and like I just understand how sort of wind shifts work. And it was going to be windy as well, which is what I've grown up in windy weather. So that's kind of what I love. And then Rio was a light wind venue, very difficult, completely foreign, not like home at all. And a lot of people would often tell me like, Rio, you shouldn't, like, it's not going to be your kind of games. It's going to be light winds. And in my career, I struggled because I'm like 6 foot tall and I'm very strongly built, that I'd always struggle with being the right weight for the laser. It was kind of something I battled with all the time, but I like worked really hard with a sort of dietitian, and like it was definitely the hardest thing I've done and I don't know if I could ever put myself into that again, of like trying to lose a huge amount of weight to know that I could be competitive, whether it was windy or light in Rio. Mm-hmm. But I managed to do it. Like I think I spent probably the last month before the Olympics, like the only conversation topic I had was cake and pizza. That's all I talked about, like the entire time. And like, I'd be like walking by pastry shops, just like staring in the window. Like, it was really like, I just found like, that's like, everyone I think finds something hard. And that was what I found hard, was like trying to be about 10 kilos less than what my natural body weight was.
That's a lot.
But like, the thing is now, like at the time, like people didn't even recognize me anymore for those probably like 3 or 4 weeks before the Olympics. They're just like, suddenly people are, Jesus, is that you, Annalise? Because I think I just looked a little bit like scary because I was so gaunt. And yeah, it was, you're kind of, I think I had like this mission. I knew what I had to do, but yeah, I'm probably like really proud of myself that I actually managed to do it, because I don't know if I could do it again.
Definitely not.
And yeah, and then managing to get through an entire week of like really difficult racing where actually everything wasn't going right for me. Like I had bad days and I had ups and downs, but I just kept on fighting every day, and I didn't freak out for the entire Olympics. And then to like, someone who doesn't ever think that they're going to be able to win an Olympic medal to actually manage to win one, like it's mad. I do like to think that I'm a good example of, that you can do it. Like, I'm like, if I can do it, anyone can do it. Like, you just, it's, you don't have to be, I don't know, like, it wasn't like I was a child prodigy that was, definitely going to be, an Olympic medalist. I was just someone who loved being, loved sport, and I liked competing and stuff. And then kind of found my own way to find out what I was good at, and then just worked and worked and worked, and it kind of paid off for me.
Yeah, it really did. You've had an amazing career. What do you think your legacy is going to be?
Well, I hope that sort of the Irish sailors are gonna also see, that I was able to do it. And at an Olympics that didn't suit me in the laser, which is the hardest Olympic class, that I was able to do it. So that it is possible, particularly if you're coming from Ireland, when you're up against systems that have huge amounts of money. Like the British sailing, like their funding pot, I think it's like 3 times what all of Sport Ireland's funding is for every sport. Like it's like they're just like, you're competing against countries that have these huge budgets, but it doesn't mean it's a kind of sport where you get, at the end of the day at the Olympics, you get supplied your boat, so you can't have fancy equipment that other people don't. You're not going to be missing out on that. And it is just, I think there's kind of a whole group of younger sailors coming through now, and Aoife and Eve are in the radial, and Finn Lynch, he's been training with me since I was actually at the London Olympics. He came second at the World Championships last year. So there's lots to be excited about. And I guess just also just hopefully women in sport that, they're like, I was like the 4th Irish woman to win an Olympic medal, which I just thought was like mad. And then like at Tokyo, we doubled it in one day with the women's 4 and rowing, and then Kelly with her gold medal in boxing. So suddenly there's actually now 9 Irish women Olympic medalists. I think it's a lot to look up to, and I think actually in general, like Irish sportswomen are the ones that are really kind of pushing what's possible. They're doing like exceptionally well across a range of sports, and the importance of having a range of sports, because everyone isn't going to be good at, there isn't going to be a box that everyone's going to fit into. It's great that that someone's able to see like, oh, I can be like Leona and play golf, or Annalise and sail, or Kelly and be a boxer, or Afra can be a rower. Like, there's so many different options, and I think it is important to have those sort of role models in all those different sports, because it's, you know, it's one of the greatest things you can do in life is, you know, play sport, whether it's very seriously or just for pure enjoyment. You know, it's where I've made all my, like, you know, best friends are in sport, and all the life lessons. Like, sport teaches you life lessons from very early on. It teaches you how to lose, because you're not going to win everything in life. Like, it's not going to be easy. And sport teaches you that pretty much straight away, that you can't just win. You know, there's always going to be someone that's probably going to be better than you. And, you know, that's okay. It teaches you to, like, you know, have some kind of discipline, be able to just accountable and show up for things, you know, show up for training, or if you're on a team, that you're showing up because you need to be part of that team. And, you know, just also being outside and being healthy. And it's, I love it. Like, I did a mountain bike race last weekend, and then 2 weekends ago, and I did a marathon last weekend. Like, I'm just, like, still addicted to sport. So, yeah.
So what's next for you then, Annalise? Do you have a plan?
So I'm going to try and finish this year. Hopefully I'll manage to scrape on by, get through the masters. This next term is pretty intense, but it's also, I'm learning lots of stuff. So it's interesting. And I've been doing loads of cycling, so I'm going to continue. I'll probably try and race a bit more on my bike this year, because I don't know, I kind of still want to do something competitive, and I found that I'm good at cycling. So it's, I'll kind of continue, I'll try and race in the sort of different sort of, there's like leagues, there's crit leagues, and I'll continue doing a bit of mountain biking stuff. And then I need to get back in a boat. So I think that's, like, I really miss it, but I also, like, the Olympics, like, really broke my heart. For sport that, like, I've never spent more than probably maybe a week not sailing. I've only actually been on the water 3 times since the Olympics, and I do miss it, but I also just needed to give myself a little break from it, because I'd put so much effort into it, and I don't know if I'm ready to go back and do it competitively, or just maybe just get back out on the water for fun. I haven't really figured that out yet. I think that's the problem with sport. Like, even though you get those, like, you know, I'm able to, like, look back and be like, oh yeah, like, I had some really great points in my career. Like, it's always like the bad points that just, like,
always
stay in your memory. Particularly if it's like the last thing that's happened is me sort of making a mess of the Olympics. But it's I still think it taught me loads of lessons, you know. Like, I think
you're very hard on yourself as well. It's the Olympics. It's, you know, even getting there is amazing. You've won a medal there. You have turned up every single time, and you've also educated so many people about sailing and helped change the landscape for women's sport as well, by all the time being there front and center and just been a role model for people. But it's just amazing that you still look at the things that you didn't do as opposed to the things that you did do.
Yeah, I think it's probably just, that's just the way it is. It's I feel like the old Winter Olympics, like, I don't know if I should have actually watched them so much. I was just like, whenever I see someone that, like, things will go wrong with them, I was like, I feel for them.
Oh, look, you can definitely look back on your career. Maybe not right now, maybe in a few years' time when you have processed everything, and be so, so proud. Thank you so much, Annalise, for coming on this podcast, and also just for everything that you've done over the last 15 years. It's been a joy to watch you. I think you will definitely have informed so many people around the country about sailing and got them really interested in it. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what you do next as well, because seeing and hearing how competitive you are, I'd say there's still something in there for you. So thank you so much, and thanks everybody as well for watching and listening. Please like, subscribe, and leave a review.